Back in the hazy glow of the early 2000s, hardcore had a whole different meaning to people like myself, who were just getting into heavy music. Back then, hardcore was pretty much any band that was on Victory Records, or had more breakdowns than Arkham Asylum patient. It was the type of music you say you're into just to impress all the cute scene girls in your school. If the band you were listening to was described as metalcore, it meant in simple terms, that band had a bunch of clean singing mixed into your tough guy growls. Bands like Trivium, Killswitch Engage, and As Lay Dying. I'm not here to hate on any of those bands. Back in the day, my buddy burned me a copy of Atreyu's The Curse, and that album went triple platinum when I was in middle school. I used to have the crappiest Walkman, you know, the kind that will make the CD skip from the slightest of bumps. And the headphones were equally as crappy. But I still love those bands. However, in the 90s, metalcore had a different meaning. It was short for metallic hardcore, a moniker beset on bands that fused together the sounds of extreme music with hardcore punk. Most prominent of that time being Integrity and Earth Crisis. But one of the most impactful has to be the almighty Converge from Salem, Mass. Being into heavy music, it is hard to ignore the band's seminal 2001 release, Jane Doe, a titan of the genre, and a cover that has graced many of t-shirts, and has probably gotten tattooed countless of times. The first time ever listening to Converge was catching them live opening for Mastodon in 2009. I remember this show quite well. I just started working at my first job at In-N-Out, and it was the year that Mastodon had just dropped Crack the Sky, and I had that album on repeat, so I was incredibly stoked to catch them live. I remember after my shift, I rushed home to the shower and changed and headed straight to the show. High on Fire was also on the bill, but I made it later than I expected and missed their set. I did make it in time to catch Converge, and it kicked straight into Plagues, and I honestly didn't know what to make of what I was experiencing. But I was open-minded. The rest of the crowd, on the other hand, was not. Def Clock was also co-highlighting this show, along with Mastodon. And the fans of the Clock made their distaste of Converge really well known. Just a bunch of salty metal dudes, and calling for them to leave the stage, getting all sorts of dumb shit like, play some real metal. I never understood this behavior. If you don't like the band, just go upstairs and chill for 30 minutes. That must be a better use of your time. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. All that noise didn't deter them, as the crowd had about 20 or 30 fans who were really into them and were raging to every song they played. I think I was so mesmerized by Mastodon's pure majesty later in the night that I forgot to really follow up on Converge. So it slipped my mind until I saw a special issue of Decibel magazine in my local record store. Shout out to Zia Records. My friend and I combed through the magazine, and of course, judging the list and being a bit distraught of the lack of some of our favorite records. More notably, we took notice of Jane Doe gaining the #1 spot, an album both of us were unfamiliar with, and were dismissive on its place on that list. I never took the time to find out why. Once again, I just moved on. I think I was too much in the tech death prog metal to really give any sort of hardcore record a chance. I wanted 15-minute epics that had a mismatch of different genres and constant tempo changes. Throughout the years, of course, the band will continue to release new albums, and without fail, each of these releases will land on multiple best-of lists. I never had any doubts that any of these accolades were unwarranted. I just wasn't hip to it yet. Getting older, bands I loved started to sort of wane on me a bit. I still enjoy the genre, especially the bands I grew up with, but it was starting to wear out its welcome. I started getting into bands that had tons of grooves and some heft to their sound. Back in the 2000s, the term breakdown was reserved for those previously mentioned hardcore bands. As I got older, those are the parts of songs that I really loved the most. Old school bands that I loved, like Suffocation, Sepultura, and Dying Fetus, had these massive grooves and riffs, and it all came from hardcore. I mean, it was right in front of me the whole time. and I just didn't see it. Reign Supreme is one of my favorite death metal albums, and there are riffs that were meant for two steps and spin kicks, and it was the same for tons of other bands I was into. Hardcore really nailed the part of a song, you know what I mean? It's the section you hear, and you know the crowd's gonna go ape shit for, or it has you making that stank face, you know what I'm talking about. In this recent revelation, I decided to give Converge another shot. I wasn't completely removed from them. I did check out the 2017 album, The Dusk in Us, and I enjoyed the opening track, A Single Tear, and the title track, but those were the only two songs I was ever really into at the time. The rest of the album sort of flew by. I left my brain shortly afterwards. Once again, another huge fumble on my part. Luckily for me, in 2026, amidst this whole hardcore renaissance I was having, Converge released Love Is Not Enough, and boy, this album is just what I needed. It has been on my rotation heavy since its release. I've been having a lot of fun experiencing the rest of their discography. Of course, Jane Doe was a masterpiece. Everyone knows that. You know that. There's nothing I can really add to the already huge amount of praise. Just go listen to it if you haven't. And if you have, just go do it again. A funny tangent real quick. I remember back in the day, this must have been around the time I saw Jane Doe top the list in that Decibel magazine. I tried to seek out Jane Doe, the album, and I bought a used copy. Apparently, I didn't grab the right album. Instead, I bought No Heroes, which still rips, don't get me wrong. But I can't tell you why my brain confused the two. Perhaps the covers look the same? Let me know if they do, or if I'm just dumb. Love Is Not Enough is such a ferocious album, but there's still tons of heft and groove to it, the kind that helped me gravitate towards the genre to begin with. This is one of the most diverse and solid catalogs I've ever listened to. Every album is good in their own right, and any of them could be your favorite, and no one will argue with you about it. It was inspiring to see a band that is so free to do what they want, and fans will accept it. Not because of some blind devotion, but because whatever they put their name on is going to be high quality. I'm happy to finally be able to call myself a fan. Of course, I realize I'm very late to the party, and being so late can leave me with a bit of imposter syndrome. Perhaps even feeling like a dirty poser. I know being a poser is something only kids in high school really care about, but nonetheless, that feeling was there. But I realized how silly that was. The four core members are such top tier musicians and masters of their craft, and everything they do services the song first and foremost, which is refreshing, especially coming from the world of metal, where at times musicianship takes precedent over songwriting. It can give bands a sort of homogeneous sound. The band's approach to songwriting always pushes them to try new things, and that excites me as I begin to look forward to any new release. Which is good news, since at the time of writing, Converge is dropping another album in the same year. And Converge is probably the only bands, I think, that can pull this off. Even if you aren't into metal or hardcore, it is hard to not get inspired by the band's constant drive for creativity. It's something I began to personally draw from. Whenever I'm stuck creatively, whether that's making videos or just picking up my guitar, no other band just simply champions the process of creating art. As I get older, it has become important to me to always keep my mind open to new music or just new experiences in general. I'm so afraid of becoming that older guy who only listens to the same music, watches the same movies they did when they were younger. Making yourself always open to new things is what keeps your mind young. It is very important to me. And be able to go back with a more experienced set of ears and able to finally understand the greatness of Converge has been awesome. And I've been kicking myself since it took me so long to do so. Anybody else experience this? A band or a piece of media you didn't get into at first, or just didn't understand until years later? Let me know in the comments down below. I know this is not my usual content, but I want to switch it up a bit and explore more aspects of myself. And I hope you guys enjoyed this quick video. Until next time, take care, and thanks for watching.